writer's block?
Yeah.
How do you navigate that?
I let it be blocked for a while. And I used to really struggle with that. I remember being younger and dealing with writer's block and trying to force myself through it. And it didn't work, and finally I let it be.
Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Rachel with Artisans of Nations, a storytelling platform dedicated to honoring Indigenous arts and culture. I'm so excited to be here in the heart of Santa Fe Indian Market with Sovereign Santa Fe. We're surrounded by history, culture, and creativity. It's an absolute honor to welcome our first guest who's kicking off our podcast series. She is a poetry writer from Muscogee Nation. Please welcome with me, Carmen Wiley.
Thank you, Rachel. So as Rachel said, my name is Carmen Wiley. I'm a citizen of the Muscogee Nation. I grew up in southeastern Oklahoma, and I'm a writer. I focus on poetry. That's where my heart has always been, and I think that's the best way my heart expresses itself too.
Well, such an honor to have you. And if you can, bless us with one of your readings to start us off, that would be great.
Absolutely. The slope of memory seems slow suddenly, like honey in the winter. My idle mind wanders down Crooked Oak, where cardinals flock my father's bird feeder. Hanging beneath hallowed ancestral hillocks, hickory fingers extend outward, and I long to feel boundless love pouring from your sunlit eyes. The kind that doesn't ask for forgiveness or wait for the gate latch to click shut. I sit still in the echoes of branches, mapping the slope of every memory, trace the winds who carry your breath. Cardinals scatter, color running from frigid bodies, language lost in canebrake. Last night, I dreamt of your shoulders, not their weight, but their warmth, and how they held whole winters without complaint. As I followed fire through your veins, found my lips near loam, asked the dirt your name. Maybe that's where I'll find you again, beneath the strained hush of wing beats, near tangled roots of memory, where nothing asks to be voiced, but everything waits to be known.
Beautiful, beautiful, thank you. And what inspired you to write that poem?
So it actually started as a different poem. So it was I think second or third stanza of a different poem that I had written, and I was reviewing it in one of my poetry classes, and my professor pointed out that it felt like the start of a different poem, and he said, it's a poem I want to read, but it doesn't feel like it belongs in this current poem. And I agreed with him. And so a couple months later, it felt like the right time to find where that poem was going to go. And so the first stanza of this poem as it stands was that third stanza of that other poem that I had written. And so it was really interesting to start that journey at the beginning rather than the end and see where it took me. Wow, that's so great. Interesting, how one thought can lead to another or transform and develop over time. What a great professor.
Yeah. Tell us, how did you start to become a creative writer, and what inspired you along the way?
Even before I could write, even before I could put pen to paper, I've been a writer. I've been a storyteller. One of my favorite and earliest memories is I would dictate stories to my brother, and we had this little word processor, and he would type it up because he liked to type and he liked to do things like that, and I liked to tell stories. And so it was very much stream of consciousness, and that's where my foundation for writing, came from, and I always knew that's something that I wanted to do. I don't remember a time when I haven't written or haven't been a writer.
Walk us through some of your emotions or things that maybe, you've been processing lately. Like, what is that feeling like and that emotion, or maybe is there a memory? Like, what do you draw from?
I draw, memories are a really large component of my inspiration. I'm really fascinated with history and with family history, and so I pull from stories that I've heard from my mom and my dad, and I'm inspired a lot by where I grew up. I grew up in rural southeastern Oklahoma, and most of my time was spent in the woods near our house, and that in itself is its own form of inspiration and its own playground. And I really like the idea of how you can be separated from a place, and you can be separated from an experience, but those experiences and those places continue to live on inside of you. And depending on what phase of your life you're in, those memories can impact you in different ways and be inspiring in different ways. And they speak to you as they are meant to speak to you in that moment.
Wow, that's beautiful to, think of. Even just, I'm just imagining when you talked about the woods and where you lived and the smell of it.
Yeah.
And just kind of drawing from that with your writing. Is there any part of the process, like, how do you get over writer's block? That's a common, thing.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that?
I let it be blocked for a while. And I used to really struggle with that. I remember being younger and dealing with writer's block and trying to force myself through it. And it didn't work, and finally I let it be. And I've learned through navigating writer's block that way to respect my work as really an autonomous being, and that I don't have full control over how it enters this world. I do a lot of listening, and it tells me how it wants to enter this world. And similar to the process of writing The Slope of Memory, it starts as one way. You have one idea, and when you listen, you really see it evolve and take its own shape. And it's so much more powerful and more meaningful to have that experience of getting to know what this project, what this piece is meant to be as it grounds itself into this world.
Different forms of writing, right? Do you have a favorite, whether it's, novel or poetry or whichever form? What's your favorite?
Yeah, definitely poetry. I mean, creative nonfiction is a really close second. But I've always been drawn to poetry, and especially as I get older, I'm just really fascinated with how much you have to narrow the scope when you're writing poetry, because it's all about economy of words, right? And I can't tell you how many hours I've spent going back and forth of, like, do I add an S? Do I take the S away?
Oh, wow.
And it's just these minute changes that have such a massive impact on the overall piece and how it lands for the reader. And the difference between writing a poem and reading it to yourself and not reading it aloud, but then writing a poem and reading it aloud and hearing how that sounds, and the impact that focusing on sound can have and shift the poem itself. I'm a sucker for alliteration. So I do like sound poems as well. So
that's so fun.
Yeah.
Speaking of sound, where else have you read any of your poetry?
So I did a reading for IIA last fall, and then I had one also last fall at the Collected Works bookstore. I did a reading with a couple of my classmates and one of my professors. And then this coming Monday, I'm going to be reading at Ghost Ranch with a group of students and Joy Harjo.
Speaking of like a group creative process experience, and one of the things that we love is creating in community. And that's super valuable to any artist. Can you share any kind of nuggets that you have found along the way while creating in community, or something that you're, maybe even looking forward to this Ghost Ranch opportunity?
Yeah, man, that's an excellent question. I really love the power of different perspectives. I like that, as a writer, as any creative, we can often get in our heads and overthink things. And I love that you can have those moments of thinking like, you've thought about it so much that you start to wonder, is this bad? And then you share it with others and you hear their feedback. You hear how it affects them. You hear how they think that, what changes can strengthen the readers and the listeners' experience. Because when we are creating, we are it's such an intimate connection with the piece that we're creating that sometimes it's difficult to understand how it's received externally. And I think that hearing that external reception strengthens people's work as a whole, and it helps pull the artist out of their own head.
Wow. Yeah, definitely can relate to, pulling us out of our own cloud of create our own mind. Yeah, that can be clouded.
Yes.
Yeah. And having someone else speak into that can add the clarity that we so need to find at times. Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, can you read us one more poem?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
Pellet song. The air smelled like creek mud and copper, like something waiting to strike, flintlock. Poised for hunting, cans on a tree stump. Skinless and shining, our hardiest kill. Cicadas tuned grief to the endless groan of summer heat. Tired earth held its breath, stifled and choking on broken mouth and barren tongue. We only killed the quiet, voices half turned to dust while our names were tapped into trees. You lined up 3 cans, steady hands and a grin. Said the last one was mine, but fired anyway. Nothing moved but the barrel, slow, like your breath, held half a lifetime ago, when all that mattered was the tinny ping of pellets striking skinned metal before silence took aim. But somewhere, downwind from home, we're still sighting rusted cans, waiting for this quiet ache to end.
Wow, thank you, Carmen. That was really moving. And actually, Carmen had submitted that piece into our next coffee table book that we will be releasing next week, and it's called The Land Between Us. And so we're so honored. Carmen also had submitted a couple other pieces in our inaugural coffee table book that is available to purchase in the back. Thank you again, Carmen, for being here. Such an honor. Thank you, everyone, for listening and tuning in to us. You can follow Artisans of Nations on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all major social media platforms. We're so grateful to our partners and supporters for the City of Santa Fe, Office of Economic Development and Arts and Culture. Thank you again to Sovereign Santa Fe, and for you being here, Carmen. We look forward to the next one. And until next time, everyone, please keep creating and sharing your stories. We need them. And have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. Thank you again for joining us here at Santa Fe Indian Market with Sovereign for Artisans of Nations podcast series. We're so grateful and honored to have each of our guests with us for 2 days. It's been an amazing lineup. Wonderful stories, voices, culture, and arts were shared, and it's been an honor. We can't do this without our supporters and community partners, especially to the City of Santa Fe, Office of Economic Development, and the City of Santa Fe Arts and Culture. We are ever so grateful for you and your partnership and all that you do in the City of Santa Fe. With all of that said, please follow us at Artisans of Nations on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, as well as major social media platforms. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for supporting the artists and Indigenous culture. Till next time, keep sharing, keep creating, and keep listening as well. Many blessings and peace.